Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Second Act Actors. I'm your host, Dr. Janet McMorty, and I'm still a medical doctor simultaneously trying to pursue a career in acting. I have a very special industry guest episode for you this week, Joanna Syrokomla. Oh my goodness. Okay. Breathe, Janet. I fangirled real hard because I've been wanting to talk to Joanna for a while. She's a costume designer. Let me back up. What does she do in this beautiful industry? She is a costume designer. She is the costume designer for one of Canada's most beloved and treasured shows, Murdoch Mysteries, which, if you've seen it, is a period piece show. So the costumes are works of art, and Joanna designs them. I was so excited when I reached out to Joanna, and she was like, sure, I'd love to be on your podcast. We have an incredible conversation. I get emotional in this conversation. What's new? But the way that she talks about her craft and the moments of just joy she has interacting with not just actors, watching actors find their character. Because as we know, like, oh my goodness, I don't know about you, but costumes are what helped me get emotionally into my character. Not just working with actors, but working with everyone else on the crew, in her costume department, the beauty that is collaboration in the creative world. Oh, I'm so excited for you to hear this episode. It is filled with incredible, incredible words of wisdom on how we as actors can work with costume design. Here's a hint. Know your measurements. Know your measurements. But now that you know what the biggest piece of advice Joanna had to give us, please listen to the episode because she's an absolute treasure and is so talented. Thank you, Joanna. Oh my gosh. Everyone, please enjoy the incredible Joanna Syrokomla. When I talk to a lot of people about the entertainment industry, and a lot of people are asking, what was it that drew you into it? And the biggest thing for me, so my very first set that I was ever on was Guillermo del Toro's Nightmare Alley. I was a background extra, like the deepest background. And I was just so blown away by the fact that the deepest background, where you don't even see me, but I had, knowing your career, a full period costume on, hair, including underwear, shoes. You would never, you did not see me at all, but there was this, not just costumes, but everyone, this pride in the craft of literally everyone that was there being so excited to do their art in whatever way it was on this film and make this. I was like, coming from a career in healthcare where that happens rarely, but when it does, it's very magic. I was like, this is so cool. I think that is such a rare thing to exist in this world.
Oh, it's quite terrific. But we always say that you think you ended up being deep background, but who knows if you might have been like pulled forward, featured, we don't know. That's one of the reasons we care very much about every single background and every single performer that we can, because you never know. All of a sudden, the director decides to do a close up on the shoes. Definitely had that happen before, where that was not something that you had planned. So, the enthusiasm, the creativity, the love that goes into all of it, because we just don't know what they're going to end up. You might end up dancing on the table. I don't know. And on that Guillermo del Toro picture, there were people who got frontline credits that basically ended up being background extras. If you watch the movie. So
cool. So tell me your story. How did you get into costume design? How did you become who you are?
Well, I was a library baby. My father had a degree in my father had a degree in library sciences, and my mother we were library people. And I one day discovered the historical fashion section in the library, which is like 892. I think it's number 892. I used to remember the Dewey Decimal System. And I started taking these books out of the library, and I was just fascinated with the costume drawings and historical paintings and whatnot. And I started bringing them home. And my mother, in the 80s was like, we just got a Xerox machine. I could Xerox those for you, which to a modern audience means photocopy. And so I started accumulating all of these various pictures of books that I was very enthusiastic about and started compiling them in order. And then when I was 16, my stepfather got transferred to a job in Paris, France. And in Paris, France, not only are all the museums free, there's so much art and there's so much to look at, but my theater professor, Milty, he was very enthusiastic about people who didn't want to be on stage. So I ended up getting very involved in the costume department there, pretty much running it for my senior year because I went to an American high school while I was there. And I knew that I wanted to be a costume designer. I knew it. I knew it. So I'm not even a first act anything. I'm not even a. I'm prologue. Maybe I'm like table of contents. I'm like prologue. I knew it. I knew when I was 14. I was like, I'm going to be a costume designer. My mom was like, no, you're not. Like doctor, lawyer, accountant, doctor, lawyer, accountant, doctor, lawyer, accountant. And then I said I wanted to go to Ryerson, which they have another name for now. And she said, fine, go waste my money. And after you finished, dabbling in this theater school nonsense, you can become a doctor, lawyer, accountant. And then when she started seeing what kind of paychecks one gets in the film industry, she never said that again. Never. And we're talking, they weren't even that great paychecks, compared in the grand scheme of things in the 90s. So she stopped that mantra of hers, thank God.
It's so interesting how that vein travels through literally everyone I talk to on this podcast.
Yes,
right?
Yes, I've heard it on your podcast before. Yes.
And it's such well-intentioned logic, right? Mm-hmm. And I come from the logical career brain as well too. Yes. And so I'm so fascinated by people, especially who were encouraged by people to pursue careers in quote unquote whimsy, right? Like the arts mm-hmm. being this whimsical career path that like, oh, isn't that nice? But when you're done, you're dabbling, go do the logical thing. Tell me about, like, was there ever a thought in your mind that said, maybe I should do the logical career path?
Was there ever a thought? No, I can't say there was. I mean, there was during the SARS strike in the 2000, which was one of the first things to sort of hit the industry when I was quite young. I remember looking at other jobs, packing dishes at William Ashley's, seeing people I knew working behind the meat counter. And I kept like, not that I'm that religious, but I would sort of pray and I'd say, if there's something else, like there's got to be a sign, like something's got to happen. So I would assume that there would have been some kind of indication. The only other thing that I ever thought I wanted to do was be an underwater archaeologist, but I'm also not sure that's the most practical job. It's underwater archaeology. Yeah.
Take me from your time at Ryerson X University, TMU. What happened after that? How do you propel yourself into now your successful career?
I would say it was definitely fate and it's what seems to be the word of my morning enthusiasm. But I hung out at a secondhand bookstore right around the corner from TMU, and I hung out with a gay astrologer and all sorts of other fascinating people. And there was a makeup school upstairs at the time of that building. And so, you have all these makeup artists and theater people and whatnot all hanging at this secondhand bookstore. And there was a woman there who said, I'm going to be an art director on a film. they're looking for costume people. And I got the job with the film. I got the job with the film, and there were three people in the costume department. There was the costume designer who had never costume designed before, had directed a short film, but knew how to sew. And then the assistant costume designer who had just come out of business school but had a car. And then I was the third person in the department who had at least worked with actors. I knew about sewing, building, construction, and theater because I had gone to theater school. And it was extremely low budget film. It was quite a disaster, actually. In fact, we're doing like 16-hour days, completely unprepared. I remember walking on the costume truck because I'd been on one in my life and being shocked that the truck didn't come with hangers and sewing machines and irons and ironing boards. Like I assumed it should come with all that stuff. And so we had to like try and populate it. And there was like no fittings. It was a disaster. It was like a disaster. My very first day, I have a walkie and like a wad of $500, and I'm driving around just trying to find umbrellas because the costume designer had no idea that we were supposed to provide umbrellas for the cast. And I remember it coming over the walkie, like, could you bring some umbrellas to set? And I was like, what are you talking about? I brought my own umbrella because I'm a grown up. Like, why do we have to provide umbrella? Like, don't these people, they knew it was raining this morning. Like, I didn't understand at all why we would have to provide. Anyway, it was a disaster. And it was 6 days a week. And I made $300 a week, so $50 a day. And I loved it. I thought it was the cat's pajamas. Like, I thought it was so great. I mean, they fed you. There was always something going on. There was chaos. There was boys. Like, how could it go? And I was 22. I was like, how can I go wrong? This is like my career. This is my life. And then I just went from one quality production to another quality production. And basically at the end of that first one, they were like, oh, you're ready to costume design our next one, which is like, in retrospect, I would look at anyone and go, you're bananas, like you're totally crazy. So I very quickly started costume designing right off the top, but I was doing it with people who either were not experienced or really didn't care. They were just really happy that I was cheap because I didn't know any better and that I was excited to be there. And I just loved it, And so I would say that the quality of my productions keep going up and up and up and up and up over the years. But there was definitely a lot of real rough going, but somehow got through it.
This is smart people, dumb questions, right? I didn't go to theater school. I didn't go to film school. Most of my listeners didn't either. Take me through. You're sitting at home. How do you get a job? Do you have an agent? Do you have how does that process work? Does the director call you? What is a day, week in your life? How does it all start?
How does it start?
Yeah.
Well, it starts with somehow it's all who you know. It's all who you know. Even by having an agent, it's still all who you know, because I can't get an interview or a meeting with someone unless somebody knows somebody who's decided to bring me in.
Got it.
I very rarely have gotten cold calls from the union. It's almost always a recommendation. So, that one quality picture I did where I was making $50 a day, brought me on to the next one. And then somebody from that project remembered me for something else. And I was trying by sending out my resume. We would fax them at the time, and I would never get any kind of response from that. I showed up. This was successful as I showed up at some other people's production offices with my resume in hand. And once or twice was like, oh, good, a body that as my mother says, speaks in full sentences. And so, so there were a couple times where I was grabbed, but, it was all very incremental, one layer on top of another. Now I definitely have an agent. Actually, I've had an agent for 23 years. We met when he was, young and needed clients, and I was young and not so bright. So we'd been together for 23 years, actually, which just might be one of my longest relationships. Now that I think about it, in retrospect. Um, but it was just, but he wouldn't be getting me jobs. I mean, it's more like it was someone I already knew, or I don't know how to quite explain it. So sometimes it was my contact, sometimes it was his contact, but again, the agent like gets you the meeting, just like an actor's agent just gets you the audition. And constant networking and, constant exposure, and there you go, I guess.
Yeah, no, I love what you said about like incremental layering. I think that's so important, especially for, I was just saying my listeners, I don't know, for me to hear.
Yeah.
Because so much of us, again, it's that career in whimsy that everyone's like, oh, you can just be plucked from obscurity and it'll just happen. Because that has been the case for people. But to hear...
Seemingly.
Yes, right? And I think, the idea of that incremental layering, especially with networking, I think is so important. And it's almost... it's almost reassuring, like I think, yeah, there is a process to doing this, and it's about patience. I think patience and, like you're saying, networking for sure. So you get a job. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Just to add to that, I think what's important is for all of us to remember, no matter what the career path is, especially in our entertainment industries, you're on the right path. Do you know what I mean? That show that I didn't get, that I was really upset about, there's a reason I didn't get that show. You know what I mean? It could have been that it was a horrible experience. It would have tarnished my reputation, or it meant there was something else better along the way. And, whomever takes care of us, whether you believe in God, the goddess, the universe, they don't necessarily care that we're going to be famous. They don't necessarily care about how much money we make, but they want to make sure that we are on the right path for growth. So I wish maybe, I don't know if I would have even believed myself if I had told myself that at like 18, 19 years old, but I do wish it was something that I could have trusted, that you are on the right path and it may not happen right away, or may not happen at all, but you're on the right path to who you need to be.
I think that comes with my gut instinct goes, I would not have believed that either when I was 18 or 19, because of the fact that I've become a better person as I age. And by better person, I mean life experience wise, more empathy, more, and also intuition, like you were saying. Yeah, I think there's because my logical science brain for so long was like, nah, that's woo, as I gain great wiseness and maturity in this life, and also learn from people like yourself and people I've talked to, more and more and more, that intuition and that fate, like you were saying, comes in, and I can't ignore it because it's like shouting at you. Yeah.
And it's also charming to be able to look back on things. You're like, oh, so that guy that I dated for 2 dates, but I ended up meeting his roommate who ended up being, producing this thing that ended up turning into, it's always really wonderful to watch that path. And by looking back on all those interactions we've had, and if, you rework the puzzle, it kind of gives you faith that you're going the right direction. And you can't ever know. You can't ever know if you had decided not to go, if you decided to go straight into acting. You can't have known that you would be in a different situation than you are now, and, professionally. We do not know the other side of the sliding doors moment. We can't possibly know. So every decision you've made is the right decision.
What makes me really happy about that is that for so many people who are changing career paths later on in life, or just thinking about it, is the feeling of, I'm now wanting to do what I've always wanted to do, and I'm behind. I need to catch up. I wish I'd been doing it sooner. But like you were saying, no, all of these decisions you made have built you into this human being you are. Take advantage of that. That's a base that's a foundation that never disappears from your fibers.
Absolutely. I had a sound guy on Murdoch Mysteries who said to me, like, what's taken you so long? Like, what took you so long to get here to Murdoch? Because I don't know. I'd done something on set and he liked it. And he was like, what, why haven't you been here sooner? Cause I started the show at season 11. And I said, well, I wasn't ready yet. I just wasn't ready yet.
There was, I'm blanking on who told me this. It was one of my guests, but it was very similar to what you just said about, if you don't get cast in a role, that's good because it wasn't meant for you. Because if it was, you would have gotten it. But if it wasn't meant for you, and if you were cast in something that wasn't meant for you, that whole project would not have been as good as it could have been. I was like, oh, that's an interesting way to think about things instead of just, being cranky and pouty.
Yes, we do need these things. We do. It's very important for us to remember them and remember that all those moments are ultimately about growth, for sure.
And doesn't it take way less energy to not be cranky and pouty about what you didn't get? Oh my goodness.
Exactly.
Okay, so I would love to know, and this is such the artist's word, your process. So you get a project, you're booked on a project. How do you develop the art that is the costumes?
All right, well, give me some parameters to start with, because give me what kind, a genre, or at least a length, like a production, TV, film, or a genre.
Because I've become obsessed. Let's talk Murdoch, because those are works of art.
Okay.
How did you? There was that yellow hat, It's just
Sharon Matthews' yellow hat recently.
Oh my God.
I love Sharon Matthews. She's so inspiring. Have you ever been in a room with her? She's incredible.
No, I covet. Like I social media stalk her, and she brings the biggest grin to my face every time I see her post something.
She's like that in person too. No, she brings the best out of everybody she interacts with. She's an incredible human being. Yeah.
Well, yeah, take me through, like, for example, something like that. This was a musical episode. This is a movement-heavy episode. How do you develop this? Do you work with the director? Do you work with the actors? All of the above? How does it work?
Well, definitely all of the above. I have like 96 different answers. I'm trying to figure out which one's the most efficient one in all of this. How do we start? So first of all, we create a stock room. We have a world of Murdoch. Not only are there 17 episodes, not only are there 17 seasons of costumes in the space, we have a lot of rentals as well that we rent from Montreal costume houses and Toronto costume houses. And so we create our own costume space, rent like our own costume house. And we receive the script. And for this one, there was discussion with Lori Lind, who is the director, about the color scheme. And one of the things that actually enhances a palette or a color scheme is the removal of colors, not just deciding what colors, but barring certain colors. So it just makes everything look more elevated. So in the musical episode, I was thinking more about the colors in a fruit market. So tomatoes and, mangoes, I know they're not native to Toronto in 1910, but, and fall colors and things like that. So if you looked at cucumbers and all that, I wouldn't allow blueberries though. So basically I kind of blues and purples and grays, because I wanted everything to have this very fall rich look to it. So allowing the reds and rusts and oranges. So that was the first thing to do, is to decide on what the colors were going to be. And my story with Sharon Matthews, who ended up playing Maisie Mack, who finds Murdoch shot in the head, was for years we'd been talking about when she shows up on Murdoch, we want her to wear yellow. And they had her cast last year. She played a Mennonite who ended up being the murderer. So she was the Mennonite, and they were like, we definitely can't put a Mennonite in yellow. And then I saw her name, like I'd heard a whispering she might be on this episode, and I saw her name on a production schedule, and I texted it to her, and I'm like, oh my God, are you back? And all she wrote back was, yellow, I want to wear yellow. And so we had no idea what the character was, and Lori didn't have a strong feeling about it, neither did the showrunner, so I just made her a fancy lady. And I'd found a magazine picture from 1911 on a magazine called the Delineator that had that striped lapel and the stripe on the bottom of the skirt. So it's a real photograph from a magazine to drawing. And we knew we were shooting outside in November. It's cold. It doesn't look like it when you watch it, but it was cold. So I knew she needed a coat. I knew she needed some swing. We knew things needed to spin. Uh, and we don't have a huge building department on Murdoch Mysteries, like nothing compared to Nightmare Alley. We have a very small department of 9 people, myself included, which is really very small. So we try and be as creative as possible. And hers would be a custom build. But other costumes, we took other things, we recut them, we remake them. I get a contemporary coat, we change the sleeves, we put on the buttons, there's some trim we put on. So it's like a big crafty business. And to me, it's like what I thought costume design was going to be when I was like starting out at 18 years old. Like that's what I finally, after my 20 some odd year career, is I find Murdoch is like what I thought costume design was going to be over 20 years ago. So I've kind of gotten to the world. So it's just like the fact that it's creative and there's trims and there's buttons and there's antique pieces that we mix with new pieces and, the rentals we mix in. And anyway, it's all just a mismatch. And then people have ideas. Well, what if we did da, 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 da? So yeah, I know I'm blabbering all over the place, but it's like a puzzle. So we decide, what is the most important costumes, and that would be Maisie Mack, and then which is Sharon Matthews's yellow coat with the striped lapel, and then how do the other costumes reflect off of that? And we had a beggar who sang, and he was wearing this waistcoat that I had actually made about 15 years ago for another project with all of these scrap pieces of brocade and tapestry. And so anyway, it's a puzzle. Every episode of Murdoch to me is like a puzzle. You decide kind of what's the most important costume. Usually it's Ogden, which is played by Helene Joy, who's the female lead. And then you decide how all the other costumes are going to look next to it. Before this musical, we cut skirts that were wider than usual. 1910, we're moving into a narrower silhouette so that they could spin. Mrs. Bracken Reed's costume has much more spin value to it because she does a whole dance number. And all of the police constables were real dancers. And so their uniforms, we had to open up under the arms and in between the legs and add spandex gussets because they had a lot more action. But almost everything else, we were able to not have to completely rebuild, fortunately. So... And again, we have 9 people, and those 9 people aren't all sewing and making. That's one of those is the on-set representative. One of them's the dresser. One of them's the truck person. One of them's the, assistant designer. Like we have 9, and one of them's me. And so we care very much about what we do, and we work very hard and get very creative. Try and, as I said, puzzle it all together and hope it's going to work out on screen.
This is the coolest thing I've ever heard. Like, that is just, I don't know why I'm getting a little emotional. This is like, that is so cool. I'm like buzzing about how cool that is. Like, that's the epitome of art in my mind, right? It's like MacGyvering, it's history, it's, working with actors and
found
dancers
materials.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we're always rebuilding, remaking, recutting. As somebody brings in their mother's old curtains, and we're like, oh, we'll just make it into something like that. One of the wedding gowns we made recently was completely made from a Gap blouse and some 1970s curtains that I found in Montreal. Like we made an entire wedding dress like that for a character.
Oh my god.
So yeah, we have a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun with it. Just so your listeners know, if they haven't ever seen Murdoch Mysteries, it's not a period show. It definitely has.
I'm going to for sure post some of the, I'm going to just repost all of everything to be like, look at these. You have to see while listening. It's, yeah. So my I'm curious how can actors make your job easier?
Well, I love actors so much. They're incredible, expressive, gorgeous humans. I get so much out of them every time. Every time I have new actors come into my fitting room, and sometimes I have 6 fittings a day, and the energy that comes off of them. I'm also in a very fortunate place in which Murdoch has a lot of love. People have a lot of love for Murdoch. People come on to the show. They know that they're going to get to dress up all old timey or look like their grandfather. People are very enthusiastic about, I would say, 90% of the cast come in and are very happy to be dressed from head to toe, like just thrilled to pieces. On a contemporary show, you get a different sense because people are like, no, these jeans look better on me. And oh, I only wear this brand of so and so. When people are doing contemporary projects, sometimes actors can't get away from can't differentiate themselves from their character, and that can create a quite a different vibe. So I'm extremely blessed that on Murdoch everybody knows they're wearing a costume, and I don't have to put women in jeans. One day I will have to put women in jeans again, and I'm not looking forward to it. Everybody hates trying on jeans. Oh my God. Maybe by the time Murdoch is done, jeans will be over. I can only hope. I can only hope. But because of all these experiences that I've had with actors over the years, and a lot of them have become my dear friends, I actually developed a seminar called Actor Costume Relations, which I presented with CAFCAD. And it was a seminar, it was supposed to be geared towards both actors and costume people about how they could work together. That I heard lots of horror stories from actors over the years. They would send in measurements and they would come in and the clothes wouldn't fit them, or certain types of remarks that were made to them, especially in the commercial world, that which I can't even understand. I've hired somebody to sell my product, and yet I'm going to stand there with 6 other people and talk about the size of their chest while they're trying on a sweater in front of all of us. I can't even, blows my mind. Doesn't even make sense to me. So I had observed other people over the years making comments, which you could see actors didn't reflect well. One actor was told that they were muffining out of something, and that ended up sparking off their like, what are they called? Eating issues. I can't remember what it's called right now. Yes. So, and then on the other hand, we had the experience of people not providing us accurate measurements because they were a 42 jacket once. And you're like, yes, but that's what you told me. And now that's what I've prepared for you. I don't think actors understand how important and how valid it is to know their measurements and their sizes and be up to date with them, because if they give me sizes which are not accurate, and then on a contemporary show I have someone go out and buy things for them, potentially in doubles, potentially they have a stunt double, and then they come back, then the actor comes in and we're standing in a fitting room with clothes that don't fit them. Who's embarrassed now? Who's uncomfortable? It's not fair for the actor. It's not fair for now. Now I also financially have to hire somebody to return those clothes, get new clothes, potentially bring you back for another fitting. It's disrespectful to the whole process. And it's not, and I appreciate, oh, I've gained a couple pounds and, I want to feel skinny or whatever that is. I don't care. I want to know what size you are. I want to dress you for exactly who you are right now. And I mean, I even had a theater professor last season who came in and measurements were like 4 to 6 inches off. And I said, so you teach, it wasn't my most charming, I admit. I was like, so you teach your theater students to have correct measurements, right? And she was like, yeah, you're right. So, I mean, I hope that somehow, I hate to say it, that she learns something to then pass on to her students. But like for me, a theater professor, like, Why are people not taught? Why are agents not like, get your measurements redone this month? I can't even understand. I can't understand it. And actors coming in wearing a lot of fragrance, that can be a problem too, because they can damage the clothes that then can't be returned once the network is approved or not approved them. Um, you know, just coming too early, it can also be a problem. Coming too late is also a problem. Just show up and be professional, and please put the clothes on. Just decide. But I do want to hear from them. It's very important to me. Like I've had the most astonishing experiences of my life is standing in the fitting room with the actor in front of the mirror and them finding that character and suddenly like standing and slouching and cocking their hip and like, the certain fluttery movements with their handbags and their gloves. Like it's just the transformation, or they start putting on a voice or an accent or losing their accent. It's magnificent. It's so much fun. And again, on Murdoch, because we have a lot of characters, it's a really fun place to be.
It's really interesting, the idea of collaboration, especially as people who are newer to the industry. I think like actors who are newer, I think the feeling or the idea of collaborating with everyone on set seems terrifying because like, who am I, this nobody, to come in and say, ooh, like, what if we shifted this part this way, right? Who am I to say that? Is that something like, it sounds like you do a lot of collaboration with actors and enjoy seeing that. Do you have any advice for anyone besides just, don't be rude?
That is definitely, I could definitely see that as a challenge. I mean, I sometimes have fittings of 6 people a day and somebody comes in with an idea and I'm like, oh, but this is different than what we had discussed. But almost every time their request pushes the character further into a better place. So I can even feel that in myself. That it's like that resentment, the little bit of the resentment, but it's only that sometimes it feels like a slog that I've got a lot going on. What I do say is extremely important for that is if you as an actor have a suggestion or an idea, is to bring that up before you go to the fitting. I am a costume designer who likes to talk to every single one of my actors a lot on very big productions. That may be the costume supervisor talks to the actors. It may all be done via email. But if you have a strong, especially if you want glasses, please ask in advance. I hate when people ask they arrive on set in the morning. Do you think, oh, what do you think if I had glasses? It's like, because there's all these anti-reflective lenses that are required. It's a whole to do. Some unions, like the other, not the union I'm with, the other one, glasses is the props department. Like, if you want glasses, like, you got to talk about that in advance. If you feel strongly about glasses, like, the first phone call, the first email, I was thinking about glasses. Again, if you've got some strong idea, like stand up for yourself and say, I would love to talk to somebody creatively before the fitting. That's a really great way to respond. Yeah, I think that's good. So instead of saying I have ideas, is even saying I would love to speak to someone in a creative manner regarding my character before the fitting, because I would like to prepare this stuff for you in advance. In Murdoch, again, because we have our own warehouse, I can flip on the fly. I can, go and pull something else. Sometimes it happens when somebody comes in and I'm like, you ain't a size 40. I was like, when was the last time you measured yourself? I always try and make a joke of it too, but I also want to like sort of teach them a lesson at the same time. However, I highly recommend saying something, but please give advance notice that people can actually do something, because I want every single one of my characters to have their own flavor if possible. Like people binge the show. How are you going to remember one murderer from the next red herring to the next lady in a white blouse? Like, that's one of the things when I came on board that I really wanted to was make the characters more distinguishable, because even I would start getting mixed up from episode to episode about, yet another guy. I mean, and also since I've been there, the casting has sort of shifted its tone. So there's a lot more remarkable faces. And also, oh my gosh, I have so much to say. And also with the way that all self-taping happens now, as opposed to people being in the room, it gives it's given us so many more faces because so many more people can audition and submit. Pre-pandemic, you had to actually be able to go to the casting facility between 2 and 4 on a Tuesday. And now people can send in tapes. So I have people who, one lady, she broke up with her boyfriend and ran away to Spain. She did a self-tape in Spain and then came back for Murdoch. So we have people now, who are or Ontario residents who are now sending us tapes from, Los Angeles or New Brunswick or Alberta or whatever, and willing to bring themselves in just to be on Murdoch. So what it's done is it's given the show a lot more diversity in just the cast available, who don't have to just come in between 2 and 4 on a Tuesday, downtown Toronto. So yes.
Been anything that has surprised you about either like the entertainment industry, your career in general, or even like the evolution over the last 20 odd years?
Well, the last point that I mentioned was a wonderful surprise. It started when the pandemic first struck and we started getting self-tapes, and I could start, and we getting people in the room, getting people in fittings who some people had never actually done film before. And as I said, because of the self-tapes, we could get, new people in. And after 17 seasons, how wonderful is that? Technology has definitely changed things a lot. When I first started, you were taking Polaroids at an angle to try and fit in as much of the costume as possible. And those Polaroids were shared or sent to, one person, not even sent to, let me rephrase that. They would bring in one person from Los Angeles whose job it was to approve the wardrobe, approve the fittings and whatnot. And nowadays you're taking a photograph sometimes in professional lighting setups, because you got to sell the look, and it goes out to a network and their assistants and the assistants of the assistants. And in some cases, people are weighing in from Los Angeles, and they're wearing Uggs because it's 22 degrees Celsius and for them it's cold. Meanwhile, they're making comments on clothing that I'm putting on a character in North Bay, Ontario in December, or January rather. So I had this very tall actress, and I'm getting notes from Los Angeles, what they want her to wear. And they're like, can you put her in these like cropped jackets and like cropped capri pants and high-heeled shoes? It was a Hallmark, by the way. And I was like, have you been to North Bay in January? Have you, like, it's all thumbs while you're at the mall trying to figure out what to buy in, the one shopping mall in North Bay. Crazy. So anyway, technology has really changed that like, because it's supposed to be so much easier to share information. In many cases, it means that there's so many more chefs. There's so many more people to make decisions. There's so many more people to be part of an approval process. Whether that is casting, whether that is wardrobe, whether that is, I don't know, maybe they have to prove what car the leading man drives. I have no idea. But at least the car, you can return the car very easily. The wardrobe is not as easy to like, fiddle back and forth. Yeah, so definitely technology. When I first started, I would have a script couriered to my house. And I remembered when they were like, "Oh, we sent it to you on email." I was like, I can't read a script on a computer. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, I cannot read a script on a computer. And then also, when we went from Polaroid to digital cameras on set, and my set supervisor, who's been with me for 23 years, she's like, I cannot do this. This is impossible. How can I possibly do this? Or even remember when they first put a camera on phones, you're like, what would you need to put a camera on a phone, or camera on a phone? I have a camera. I'm like, how ridiculous is this? So definitely technology has changed things. but there's also a lot more paperwork. Obviously, there's a lot more forms that need to be filled out. There's a lot more, you know, apps that need to be uploaded to. There's, you know, on much bigger shows than Murdoch, there's software in which, you know, photos taken on set get uploaded to some kind of program, and then somebody else fills in all the costume details, and that gets shared with the, you know, the network. We're talking much bigger shows than Murdoch have the whole system. And one day I'll go there. Or maybe not. Maybe Murdoch will go to season 35, and I can just, my greatest wish would be just to drop dead in the middle of the set. That'd be great. I had to go. I just never have to deal with it.
1910. I love that.
Yeah. Well, it'll be 1939 by that
That's
point,
true.
I'm sure.
Yes.
But just drop dead in the middle of the set. Maybe they dedicate the episode to me. I'll leave that up to my agent. I would love that. Maybe they'll be like, great, Joanna went down. Can you just come in and fluff her hair, cover her in an apron? She looks period enough.
Just manifest that. Put it out into the world. It already has been there. Yeah, I love that.
It's already been there.
Yeah,
I think that's okay. I've decided that's how it's gonna go.
It's great. Like the costume designer's version of like the Viking funeral.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just send me off. Drop dead onto set. I love it.
I love it. It's great.
You've told me about a lot of amazing stories on set. Do you have any other ones that really crop into your mind? Any, you know, funny stories, anything like that from your time?
Well, I'm going to tell you a story of the most gracious actor I have ever met, which is Judith Light. So Judith Light. So I'm doing this very challenging 1890s movie in Winnipeg. Very little notice. I basically have 3 weeks to camera. There's not very much costumes of the period available in Canada because they're all being used on Murdoch Mysteries and Anne with an E. The costume designer had to leave the project. I had to come in at the last minute. So Angela is cast in this movie, and she shows up for a fitting. She's come from the airport. She shows up for the fitting, and she's got, you know, this tote bag with her, basically. And I was like, where's your luggage? She's like, this is my luggage. I was like, but you're in Winnipeg in December. It was November. You're in Winnipeg in November. And she was like, just you wait. And so she takes off her coat, and she takes that off, and then she takes off another coat, and then she takes off a sweater, and then she takes off another sweater, and then she takes off another sweater, and then she takes off a turtleneck, and then she takes off a pair of pants and another pair of pants. And she's like, I hate checking my luggage. And then I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, do you need a bag for that? And she said, no. And she took out a little zippered tote, shook it out, and then she folded all her clothes and put them in there. And she just did not want to check luggage. She wore all her clothes on the plane. She did not want to check luggage. But that was my first introduction to Judith Light. But she was so grateful. She also was cast last minute at this thing. And she was so grateful and so charming. Every time that I would come to set, she would cross the set to come talk to me and tell me how much she loved the clothing on the background. Like, there was no need for that to happen. Like, I can tell you that many actors are extremely focused when they get on set. They have the director, the producer, the showrunner, other stars, possibly publicity, hair, makeup, da da da. I mean, I try and go to set and not bother them. That's how I feel like. I feel like sometimes I'm bothering them, but that's my own, you know, issues. But she would always make such an effort to speak very highly of everything and everyone and try and elevate everyone's day. And it's, you know, it reminds me of, you know, why people love dogs. Every time you meet a dog's like so excited to see you, no matter who you are. It wants to be there, it wants love. And I think that if people can take that into their day, like even on a set, because, you know, I can be stressed out. I can have a lot of pressures. You have a network, you've got, you know, an actor who may not be happy, you know, the first AD is waiting, there's snow, the car won't work, you can't afford this, da, 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 da. Like, this could be a lot of things. And I used to bring that with me, I think, you know, that look on my face of, like, you know, deer in headlights or the pressures or whatever. And I've realized that what makes somebody successful at costume, you know, in my job, what makes someone successful is someone who can appear calm. appear like they've got it all together, appear like, I'm dependable and in the wake of chaos that I can manage. I mean, sometimes it does mean like, 24 hours later, I might like burst into tears while standing at Starbucks or whatever, or, wherever I am at the moment. But just keeping that calmness and being able to make other people feel like confident, I think is really important. And it's very important part of when I first meet actors on Murdoch as well, is I want them, because they're coming to what everyone calls a very well-oiled machine on Murdoch. And from my perspective, it could be another man being put in a suit, that not every single character, as much as I want it to be, is like distinguishable or has something about them. Many cases, it's just men in suits. And I still try to be a host for them, like, welcome here. Because, a lot of actors, this might be their only role that year. For me, it's second nature. I'm here every day. I'm extremely fortunate to be here. I'm used to all the moving and the shaking, but some of these actors come in nervous because they haven't worked, or they may not have worked that much that year. And on some shows, I hear about actors feeling like they're just going through like a treadmill or a factory of fittings. I have a couple friends of mine, costume designers, who have so many people to dress that they now have 3 fitting rooms, and that they have an assistant dressing every single person, and they're just going now from room to room to room like a doctor. But they have no choice because of the schedule that their entire department is under. But to me, it's so important that I make every actor feel like, happy to have you here. It's great to see you. This is this here. Do you want a coffee? You need the restroom? Like, this is what we've got idea, just to make them feel like they're part of the process. And people speak really highly of the Murdoch set from an actor's point of view, that they do come in and feel really comfortable and, welcomed, even if they're just there for one line.
They do. They truly do. I think that's so powerful and extremely giving. And, like philanthropy. I don't know what the right word is. You know what I mean? Like there's no reason to have to do that. I think it's just so similar to the doctor-patient relationship. I'm seeing so many analogies.
It is so
right?
similar for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I thought I was going to be a doctor actually at one point. So
same. But it is, right? There's this idea of we say in medicine, before you go into a room that's chaos, check your own pulse first, right? Like make sure you are the calmest person coming into the room.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, like it's that physician heal thyself kind of like check your own pulse first before checking the patient's, because you want to come in with that level of calmness. And I think, it comes back right to what we were starting with about I wouldn't have been able to do that when I was 18, 19, 20 years old because I was an idiot.
Of course.
As I should have been at that age. We're all idiots. We should be. And now as I get older and become a better, more empathetic person, it's just it and also become more experienced in the craft of medicine, you in the craft of costume design. It comes naturally with that experience, I think. But I do think there is a personality type, because there's a personality type that does the opposite, right? And they just seem to are always that. You're like, why? This is making more work for other people. I guess like on the days when it does feel like a slog, like you mentioned, or you have this time crunch, do you have any advice, or what have you noticed helps you get back into that giving person that you naturally are?
Well, probably baked goods.
No, yes.
Baked goods.
Done. Easy.
What gets me back into being that type of person? I mean, I definitely am not 100% perfect there. I'm a fire sign. I could definitely have my temper tantrums. Sometimes I blow up and it can be quite dramatic. I'm not always a calm, beatific soul by any means. That's why I keep practicing and I keep working at it. I do work on a certain type of adrenaline because not only am I having these fittings, but I have people in my workroom asking me questions. How do you want the sleeve? What color are you using this? Have you chosen buttons? And my set team also, how do you want this? How da 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 da. I mean, I always wish there was like just two more people in the room to help so they could answer those questions or something like that. Or I could just, what's the word, clone myself, but just for a couple hours here and there. Like if I could put myself in a box, because I don't want her wandering around all the time and causing a fuss or having all the fun without me. But how do I get back to that point of calmness? I might take a brisk walk. I may make myself a cup of tea or a coffee, or what I think it is leaving the situation. I think it's leaving because I know people throughout the entire building. So I might go and walk over to the props department or the paint department or whatnot. And even if something is going on that's a bit dramatic, I'll be like, hey, how's it going? How are you doing today? Oh, that's nice. Because I'm like trying to talk myself out of whatever dramatic moment perhaps happened. But what can be a thing is trying to come up with a new look. So we had almost 300 actors last year. And that's not just one costume each. So 300 performers, not including any of the background extras. And I call it a forced creativity. Like how could I possibly come up with another outfit? Sometimes I feel like a vending machine. I'm like, gosh, can I come up with an, but it's a forced creativity, which I think has just made me so much better at what I do every day. Because every day I don't have a choice. I have to make a decision. I have to come up with an outfit. I have to choose something. And it just, forces you to get better and better all the time. So I don't know what the answer was there. I gave you a whole bunch of answers, a whole bunch of everything.
Do you have anything you're looking forward to coming up that you're allowed to talk about?
Well, we're fingers crossed for season 18, which is bananas. It's 18 seasons. I am doing a seminar in the next couple of weeks called the Costume Design Interview. And it's a seminar for people about how to prepare for an interview as a costume designer, how to navigate the people in the room, because you can be so prepared and know your script and have all your design references and go into the room and it can just be like dead flat. Like people are distracted, not focused. I've had directors, put their feet up on the desk and not look at me. Anyway, so we talk about navigating the room and what to do when you don't get the job. So that's a seminar with some fantastic people. Louis Cicada, who is the costume designer of Nightmare Alley and Shape of Water. So he's going to be there. And Charlene Akumoa, who did Robin Hood and Canada's Drag Race. So we're like three different levels sort of professionally. So this way we can talk about, web series types interviews versus these giant features that Louis does. So we put on the seminar twice during the pandemic online. That was quite successful, but we're going to do it in person. And after the seminar, we're having a social and a book sale, costume and art book sale, as well as a fundraiser for CAFCAD. So yeah, that's at the Album Studios on April 14th. If anyone wants to drop by at 3:00, if they don't want to go to the seminar, but want to be part of the social, 3:00 on April 14th at Album Studios. I'm thinking also about writing a book about the Murdoch costumes. So I've been dabbling. I've been writing some pieces here and there and gathering photos together. So Downton Abbey has a costume book. Marvelous Miss Maisel has a costume book. Euphoria has a costume book. I've been reading, Cecil Beaton wrote this incredible diary about the creation of My Fair Lady, because he was the costume and set designer on My Fair Lady. So there are books out there for sure. Star Wars has a book, several books. So I've been working on that, we'll see how that pans out because it's not totally up to me. But that would be very exciting. And it would definitely not be serious. Definitely not be a serious book.
It would be
Oh, what a serious book.
It'd be the coolest full circle moment to your childhood in the library. Like your own book, and then you're inspiring the next generation in that
Oh,
892 Dewey Decimal System being like, that's where it is.
Oh my gosh.
Your book will be there.
I didn't think about that, but that's quite tremendous for sure. Oh, how lovely.
Do you have any final words of wisdom or advice?
Well, I know that your podcast is, I know that your podcast is, what's it called? I know that your audience is a lot of actors and performers like that. I would just say my advice would be gracious, be open, know your measurements, have a social media presence. Because let me tell you, the moment I'm standing over someone's desk and I'm like, so who's playing so and so, and they go, oh, it's Monica. I'm Googling you, so I want to see a vaguely recent photograph of what you look like. And I think social media is an important presence for actors, especially, especially even for smaller projects. You want to cast someone who looks like they're enjoying their life. You want to look like someone who celebrates their accomplishments. I want to see that you went out to see the screening of the Murdoch musical. I want to see that you were on the red carpet for some tiny little film festival. I want to see, how dressed up you were for your birthday party. I want to see you on set with your arm around some C-list actor. Like, I think that's really important, especially on a smaller project. I think that if I was producing or casting something, I would want it to look like I could actually work with these people. So I think, to show that quality and your own personality. So yeah, that's important. I want to see recent photographs of you and who you are and who you look like. And I think if I was an actor, I would take every single acting class I could, because I often see actors who are in the same class who then create projects together. It's this constant networking and meeting like-minded people and moving around. I think that any chance you have to network and meet people who are your peers, I think is a tremendous experience, which is why I'm so involved in my organization, CAFCAD, about getting people to meet their like-minded peers, because I've seen some incredible relationships grow. So just get out there, get out of your pajamas, get out of the self-tape world. Just realize it's not just about yourself sitting in front of a camera, but that you get out there and mix as much as possible.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and thank you, Joanna, for being my guest this week. Okay, everyone, if you follow me on social media, I highly recommend you do. I'm lots of fun at Second Act Actors. I'm going to post a picture of the costume we talked about, the really special one that Sharon Matthews wore, the yellow. Oh my goodness, it's just a work of art. And you heard or saw me absolutely lose my mind about this costume. I'm going to post it so you can see some of the incredible work that Joanna does. Go follow her on social media as well, too. Josie Costume, Josy Costume. And I'll also post how to find her on social media. I highly recommend you follow her because her costumes are just so beautiful and she's just so full of joy and life, as you just witnessed. I hope you will all tune in next week for another episode of Second Act Actors. Bye!